presenting a 7-tier ranking of Super Bowl MVP awards. We'll kick things off with Tom Brady in the first tier. Kicking off with Tier 1. Now, we're starting with the man who would become the greatest of all time, but this was back in the 2001 Super Bowl, well before he earned that title. What makes Tom Brady's initial Super Bowl MVP so compelling is that, by the numbers, it was his least impressive performance. The second-year quarterback, then 24, had replaced an injured Drew Bledsoe in the second week of the season and orchestrated a turnaround from a 0-2 hole to an 11-5 record. Heading into the postseason, few gave New England a chance against the Rams, who were 14-point favorites and known as the greatest show on turf. Brady played with efficiency, though his performance was far from breathtaking. He went just 16 for 27, throwing for only 145 yards and a single touchdown. For an MVP-caliber game, those figures are hardly remarkable. However, Brady's true contribution was his flawless game management. He avoided turnovers, made crucial conversions on third down, and, most critically, commanded that unforgettable final drive. With just 1 minute and 20 seconds remaining and the score deadlocked at 17, Brady guided the Patriots into position for Adam Vinatieri to kick the game-winning field goal as the clock ran out. It was a clutch, legendary moment, but when measured against other MVP showings, the statistics simply don't stack up. But rest assured, we'll be revisiting some of his other performances later in this ranking. Following that, we have Harvey Martin and Randy White, the sole co-MVPs in the history of the Super Bowl, a fact that largely explains their placement in this tier. In 1977, the Cowboys posted a 12-2 regular season record, largely on the back of their formidable doomsday defense. Martin delivered an incredible season, notching 20 sacks and earning the Defensive Player of the Year award. Playing at defensive tackle, White was an equally dominant presence right next to him on that line. During the Super Bowl against Denver, the Cowboys' defense was utterly overpowering. Between them, they brought down quarterbacks Craig Morton and Norris Weiss a total of 4 times, with Martin himself responsible for 2 of those sacks in the title game. The Broncos quarterbacks surrendered 4 interceptions in total, as Dallas capitalized on 8 turnovers altogether during their 27-10 triumph. Both Martin and White were unstoppable on that day. The problem, however, is the shared MVP award. Neither player delivered a performance so singularly dominant that it could be called their own. They were phenomenal players on a legendary defensive unit, but having to split the honor prevents them from ranking any higher. Moving from one NFC team to a rival, we encounter perhaps the most unexpected Super Bowl MVP ever, Otis Anderson of the 1990 Giants. That year, the Giants finished 13-3, with Anderson serving as a veteran presence who shared rushing duties with Rodney Hampton. Everything changed when Hampton fractured his leg during the divisional round matchup with Chicago, forcing Anderson to step up while famously wearing his practice trousers. That's right, his practice pants. They turned into a superstitious token of good fortune for him throughout that postseason journey. In the championship game against the Bills, Anderson handled 21 carries, gaining 102 yards and scoring a pivotal touchdown in the third quarter. That score pushed the Giants ahead 17-12. New York ultimately secured a 20-19 victory after Scott Norwood's infamous missed field goal. Anderson's performance was reliable and impactful, yet 102 yards and 1 touchdown isn't exactly an overwhelming case for an MVP, particularly when his team's defense contained the league's top offense to just 19 points. To round out this level, we have another surprising MVP choice in Dexter Jackson of the 2002 Buccaneers. Tampa Bay's defense that season was the stuff of legends, propelling them to a 12-4 record in John Gruden's inaugural year as head coach. That year, the defensive unit allowed the fewest points in the entire league and was relentlessly suffocating from start to finish. Facing the Raiders in the Super Bowl, Jackson made his mark early by picking off Rich Gannon twice in the first half, establishing the tone for what would turn into an absolute rout. Those 2 interceptions were instrumental in helping Tampa Bay seize the early momentum and assert control over the contest. The catch, however, is that both of Jackson's interceptions occurred before halftime, and neither led directly to a touchdown. In contrast, his teammate Dwight Smith returned 2 interceptions for touchdowns in the second half, literally putting 14 points on the board by himself. Smith's contribution was demonstrably more significant, but Jackson received the MVP award due to his early plays that shifted the game's momentum. In Level 2, we encounter a group of slightly more deserving Super Bowl MVPs, although still not among the all-time greats. Moving up to Tier 2, a modest improvement. We begin this category with Peyton Manning's Super Bowl MVP from 2006. Manning had at last shed the reputation that he couldn't win the crucial games, following a string of postseason letdowns. The Colts achieved a 12-4 record that regular season, with Manning passing for 4,397 yards and 31 touchdowns. The playoff journey, however, was the real headline. In the AFC Championship, Manning spearheaded a comeback for the Colts from a 21-3 hole against the Patriots, finally conquering his rival Tom Brady when the stakes were highest. During the Super Bowl against the Bears, played in a downpour in Miami, Manning was 25 of 38 for 247 yards with 1 touchdown and 1 interception. While the numbers weren't dazzling, he delivered with efficiency when it counted. Still, a stat line of 247 yards, a single touchdown, 1 pick, and a lost fumble is merely adequate for a Super Bowl MVP. This award felt more like a recognition of him finally overcoming his past struggles than a reward for a truly commanding performance. Shifting gears to a truly dominant figure, let's talk about Ray Lewis during the 2000 season. The Ravens finished 12-4 that year, fielding what might be the most dominant defense in the annals of the NFL. At its core was Lewis, who racked up 137 tackles in the regular season and was named Defensive Player of the Year. When they faced the Giants in the Super Bowl, Baltimore's defense put on a truly staggering display. They restricted New York to a mere 152 yards of offensive production, which at the time was the 3rd lowest total in Super Bowl history. The Giants failed to score a single touchdown on offense. Their only points were generated by a 97-yard kickoff return from Ron Dixon. Lewis's final stat line was 5 tackles and 4 defended passes, which doesn't scream statistical powerhouse, yet his leadership and on-field presence were absolutely indisputable. An outstanding player on a legendary defensive unit, but his individual statistics hold him back in the rankings. And on the topic of legends, we turn to Jake Scott with the 1972 Dolphins. A review of Super Bowl history would be incomplete without discussing the Dolphins' flawless season. The 1972 Dolphins posted a 14-0 record during the regular season, which at that time was the only perfect regular season in the annals of the NFL. Scott was a cornerstone of Miami's no-name defense, earning a Pro Bowl nod while leading one of the league's most suffocating secondaries. In the championship game against Washington, Scott picked off Billy Kilmer twice, including a momentum-swinging 55-yard return out of the end zone. His remarkable ability to track the ball was fully evident as he completely neutralized Washington's aerial assault. The Dolphins secured a 14-7 victory, completing the only undefeated season in the history of the NFL. However, the game itself was far from a clinic. Scott played exceptionally, but the contest was sloppy, and his output, while impressive, wasn't otherworldly. The same can be said for Richard Dent. Dent's season in 1985 was simply incredible. The Bears finished 14-1, fielding what is widely considered the greatest defense in the history of the NFL. Dent topped the league with 17 sacks in the regular season, added 6 more in the postseason, and also secured the Defensive Player of the Year award. In the Super Bowl versus the Patriots, Chicago's defense utterly dominated New England with a final score of 46-10. Dent contributed 1.5 sacks, forced 2 fumbles, and lived in the backfield, constantly disrupting the quarterbacks. The entire defensive unit was so phenomenal that you could have named several players as MVP. William Perry even scored a touchdown. Walter Payton was his usual legendary self, and the defense was dominant as a collective. And to round this out, we have Larry Brown with the Cowboys. Brown is among the most improbable Super Bowl MVPs ever. He was a 12th round selection out of TCU, a draft round that is no longer even part of the process. He secured a starting position in 1995 only after an injury-sidelined quarterback Kevin Smith during the season's opening game. In turn, Brown produced his finest season with 6 interceptions, 2 of which were returned for scores. He also made a game-changing interception against Brett Favre and the Packers in the NFC Championship matchup. During their Super Bowl showdown with Pittsburgh, Brown intercepted Neil O'Donnell twice in the second half. Each of those takeaways led to immediate touchdowns that put the game out of reach. Dallas won by a score of 27-17. His 77 yards on interception returns set a new Super Bowl benchmark at the time. But let's face facts. O'Donnell lobbed 2 of the easiest interceptions imaginable right to him. He benefited from major blunders instead of creating his own opportunities. Ascending to level 3, we find some truly commendable performances. Level 3, good performances. Now we're delving into MVP performances that were legitimately exceptional, beginning with what is arguably the most clutch reception in Super Bowl lore. Santonio Holmes had what you might call a turbulent 2008 season. The Steelers posted a 12-4 record, but Holmes was arrested for marijuana possession that October and was made inactive for one game by Mike Tomlin as a disciplinary measure. It proved to be the wake-up call he required. He returned with a vengeance in the playoffs, becoming Big Ben's most trusted option when the stakes were highest. That was critically important because in the Super Bowl against the Cardinals, Holmes was simply sensational. He hauled in 9 receptions for 131 yards and a touchdown, all of which were new personal bests. But it was his final touchdown that etched his name into legend. With just 35 seconds left and the Steelers down 23-20, Big Ben delivered an immaculate pass to the far corner of the end zone. It stands as one of the most incredible catches in the annals of the Super Bowl. Our next player is another receiver, Julian Edelman. Edelman's 2018 season was a story of redemption. He had sat out all of 2017 with a torn ACL and was then suspended for the first 4 games of 2018 for breaching the league's PED policy. When he came back, he instantly reclaimed his role as Tom Brady's safety valve. During the playoffs, Edelman was an unstoppable force. He accumulated 26 catches for 388 yards over 3 contests, which at the time was the record for most receiving yards in a single postseason. The Super Bowl against the Rams was a grinding defensive struggle, the lowest scoring championship game ever at 13-3. Edelman was the sole beacon of offensive production, snagging 10 passes for 141 yards. 8 of those receptions moved the chains for a first down, sustaining drives in a game where scoring was a monumental challenge. It was a truly solid MVP performance in a contest that was desperate for someone to make a difference. Finding offensive points was also a significant challenge for Desmond Howard's Green Bay Packers. The former Heisman Trophy winner had been a journeyman and a letdown around the league after being taken 4th overall by Washington in 1992. After being signed by Green Bay as a free agent, he finally carved out a niche for himself as a return specialist. Against the Patriots in the Super Bowl, Howard was electric. He ran back 4 kickoffs for 154 yards and 6 punts for 90 yards, giving him a total of 244 return yards, both new Super Bowl records. After a Curtis Martin touchdown narrowed Green Bay's lead to 27-21, Howard took the subsequent kickoff 99 yards for a score, which shattered New England's hopes for a comeback. He is the only special teams player in history to win the Super Bowl MVP award. Finally, moving from one NFC contender to another, we have Emmitt Smith. Smith's 1993 season was iconic. The Cowboys began 0-2 while he was in a contract holdout, making Jerry Jones eat his words after he claimed Emmitt Smith is a luxury, not a necessity. The moment Smith signed his contract, Dallas went on to win 12 of their next 14 games. As the league's most valuable player, Smith paced all rushers with 1,486 yards and 9 touchdowns on the ground during the main campaign. Until Smith's team achieved the feat, no franchise had ever started the season at 0-2 and gone on to win the Super Bowl. In the championship game against the Bills, Smith's performance was masterful. He ground out 132 yards and 2 scores on 30 carries, which allowed him to dictate the pace and exhaust the Buffalo defense. The Cowboys secured a 30-13 victory for their second consecutive title, and Smith's game was a textbook example of a bell cow back taking complete control of the biggest stage. Following this, we'll examine some truly great showings. Tier 4 is dedicated to great performances. We are now entering the realm of genuinely elite showings. Kicking things off is Cooper Kupp's 2021 campaign. Kupp's season that year was one for the history books. He achieved the receiving triple crown by leading the league in catches, yardage, and touchdowns, while also being named the NFL's Offensive Player of the Year. Kupp proved to be an unsolvable puzzle for the Bengals in the Super Bowl. His final line included 8 receptions for 92 yards and 2 scores, one of which was the decisive game winner with 1 minute and 25 seconds left, sealing a 23-20 Rams victory. That entire final drive belonged to Kupp. He accounted for 4 receptions totaling 39 yards, a crucial 7-yard rush on a 4th and 1, and ultimately the 1-yard touchdown catch that secured the championship. With that performance, Kupp joined an exclusive club as just the 2nd player in history to capture the receiving triple crown, the Offensive Player of the Year award, and the Super Bowl MVP trophy all within the same year. The only other person to do so was Jerry Rice, whom we will discuss later on. Sticking with the receiver position, let's look at Hines Ward. The story of Ward's 2005 season is one of sheer grit and clutch moments. As the Steelers compiled an 11-5 record, Ward served as the most dependable option for Big Ben and the anchor of their receiving group. In the Super Bowl matchup with the Seahawks, Ward hauled in 5 catches for 123 yards and a score, contributing to Pittsburgh's 21-10 win. His 43-yard touchdown catch was the play that sealed the game, coming off a trick play where Antoine Randall delivered. An impeccable throw to a completely uncovered Ward, who strolled into the end zone with less than 7 minutes to play. Ward had also made a pivotal 37-yard reception earlier in the contest on a 3rd down, which positioned Big Ben for his 1-yard touchdown run. He consistently delivered game-changing plays precisely when the Steelers required them. Next, we must highlight Malcolm Smith's 2013. Now, I'll admit this selection is contentious, since Cam Chancellor arguably had an equally deserving claim, but Smith's campaign in 2013 was a masterclass in opportunistic play. He was only elevated to a starting role in Week 15 after KJ Wright sustained an injury. In the championship game against Peyton Manning and the historically potent 2013 Broncos offense, Seattle's defense delivered a legendary performance. The 43-8 final score represented one of the most one-sided victories in Super Bowl history. Smith recorded 10 tackles, pounced on a fumble, and took an interception back 69 yards for a touchdown. His pick six occurred just before the half, extending Seattle's advantage to 22-0 and effectively breaking Denver's will. To complete this tier, we bring back the greatest of all time. We go from his very first Super Bowl MVP in Tier 1 to his most recent one right here. Brady's inaugural season in Tampa Bay was a statement that his success was not merely a byproduct of the Belichick system. As a 43-year-old, he amassed 4,633 passing yards and 40 touchdowns over the course of the regular season, guiding the Buccaneers to an 11-5 record and their first postseason berth since 2007. Facing Patrick Mahomes and the reigning champion Chiefs in the Super Bowl, Brady was incredibly precise. He went 21 for 29, throwing for 201 yards and 3 touchdowns, earning a 125.8 passer rating. The Bucs cruised to a 31-9 win inside their home stadium. At age 43, he cemented his legacy as the oldest quarterback to ever win a Super Bowl, collecting his 5th Super Bowl MVP award in the process. Coming up next are the all-time legendary performances. Tier 5 showcases the all-time greats. The 2009 season for Brees was nothing short of extraordinary. That year, the Saints achieved a 13-3 record, the best in their history, while Brees passed for 4,388 yards and 34 touchdowns, posting a 109.6 passer rating. He was the undisputed leader of New Orleans' formidable offense. In the Super Bowl against Peyton Manning's Colts, Brees delivered a spectacular performance. He connected on 32 of his 39 attempts for 288 yards and a pair of touchdowns, matching the Super Bowl record for completions with 32 and achieving an 82% completion rate. The Saints emerged victorious 31-17, securing the franchise's first ever championship only a few years after the city was ravaged by Hurricane Katrina. Brees' execution was flawless, particularly during the game-clinching touchdown drive in the final quarter, where he distributed the ball among 7 different pass catchers. And speaking of flawless execution, our next subject is Aaron Rodgers. For Rodgers, the 2010 season represented his definitive emergence from the long shadow of Brett Favre. With a 10-6 record, the Packers just scraped into the postseason as the 6th seed. But then, the playoffs began. To get to the Super Bowl, Green Bay had to win 3 consecutive games on the road, a feat accomplished with Rodgers playing at an elite level. Facing the Steelers in the Super Bowl, Rodgers was simply magnificent. He registered 24 completions on 39 attempts for 304 yards and 3 scores without a single interception in their 31-25 triumph. He connected with Jordy Nelson and Greg Jennings for touchdowns, Jennings scoring twice, and maintained his composure under duress throughout the entire game. Another player who put all skepticism to rest, at least temporarily, was Joe Flacco. For Flacco, the 2012 season became a quest to prove he belonged in the conversation of elite quarterbacks. The Ravens finished the regular season at 10-6, with Flacco delivering a dependable, if not dazzling, performance. But once the playoffs started, a magical run began, and Flacco became an unstoppable force. Over a 4-game span, he threw for 11 touchdowns with 0 interceptions, which tied Joe Montana's record for the most touchdown passes in a single postseason without being picked off. In the Super Bowl showdown with the 49ers, Flacco completed 22 of his 33 passes for 287 yards and 3 touchdowns. Baltimore secured a 34-31 victory in a contest marked by a strange 34-minute blackout. His flawless playoff performance, which included 11 touchdowns and no interceptions, resulted in a huge contract and solidified his place in history for a time. Concluding this tier is Terry Bradshaw. For Bradshaw, the 1978 season represented the peak of his career. Pittsburgh finished with a 14-2 record as Bradshaw topped the NFL with 28 touchdown throws, ultimately earning him the league's most valuable player award. Following years of doubt surrounding his intellect and skill, this season served as his ultimate justification. During the Super Bowl against Dallas, a repeat of Super Bowl X, Bradshaw delivered a masterful performance. He connected on 17 of 30 attempts for 318 yards and 4 scores with a 119.2 passer rating in their 35-31 win. On the grandest stage imaginable, he confirmed his status as a genuine superstar quarterback. Moving on to Tier 6, which is a notch down. These athletes delivered performances marginally less impressive than those in Tier 7, the absolute elite. We begin with Nick Foles in 2017, whose narrative is the stuff of legends. Only 2 years prior, he had considered leaving the sport for good, having moved between several teams, and he began the season as the second-string quarterback behind Carson Wentz. But after Wentz suffered an ACL injury in Week 14, Foles stepped in to lead the 13-3 Eagles. Facing Tom Brady and the Patriots in the Super Bowl, Foles was simply magnificent. He connected on 28 of 43 attempts for 373 yards, 3 touchdowns, and a single interception, achieving a 106.1 passer rating in a 41-33 offensive showdown. Foles also made history as the first individual to both pass for and receive a touchdown in the Super Bowl. That play, the Philly special, was a 4th down gamble where Foles hauled in a 1-yard score from Trey Burton just before the half, and it remains one of the most celebrated moments in the history of the Super Bowl. With that, Foles guided Philadelphia to its inaugural Super Bowl title, solidifying his status as a folk hero, earning a statue in the process. Next, Von Miller delivered a ferocious performance in the 2015 Super Bowl. Denver finished the season at 12-4, with Miller registering 11 sacks in the regular campaign before adding another 5 during the postseason. He served as the cornerstone of Denver's famed no-fly zone defense, which propelled an aging Peyton Manning to a final title in Super Bowl 50 against Cam Newton's 15-1 Panthers. Miller was a completely dominant force. His stat line included 2.5 sacks, 6 tackles, 2 forced fumbles, and a pair of quarterback hits in their 24-10 win. Miller thoroughly outplayed the league's MVP. He was impossible to block, altered the course of the game, and was the primary factor in Denver's championship victory. Speaking of being the catalyst for a win, let's discuss Joe Namath. By modern standards, Joe Namath's 1968 season was merely adequate. The Jets posted an 11-3 record, and Namath passed for 3,147 yards with 15 touchdowns against 17 interceptions. He was named AFL Player of the Year and guided New York to an AFL title. And then he made his famous promise. Just 3 days prior to Super Bowl III, Namath audaciously promised a Jets win over the Baltimore Colts, who were favored by a staggering 18 points. When game day arrived, Namath delivered on his word. He went 17 for 28, throwing for 206 yards with no touchdowns, but crucially, also no interceptions. While his statistics weren't staggering, his game management was flawless, as he dictated the tempo and kept Baltimore's explosive offense sidelined. The Jets claimed a 16-7 victory in what is still considered one of the most monumental upsets in the history of sports. Namath's guarantee and the ensuing win validated the AFL, transforming the Super Bowl into the massive event we know today. Had they lost, the league merger could have taken a very different path. We must also discuss the greatest show on turf. Kurt Warner's 1999 campaign remains among the most incredible underdog tales in the annals of the NFL. Once a grocery store clerk and an Arena Football League player, he ascended from third on the depth chart to the starting role when Trent Green suffered a torn ACL during the preseason. Street Lewis finished 13-3 as Kurt Warner amassed 4,353 passing yards and 41 touchdowns against only 13 interceptions, earning a 109.2 passer rating. These were all league best figures, and he was named the league's MVP. Then, facing the Titans in the Super Bowl, Warner was simply outstanding. He connected on 24 of 45 attempts for 414 yards and a pair of touchdowns, posting a 99.7 passer rating. At the time, his 414 yards through the air established a new Super Bowl benchmark. And just like that, Kurt Warner went from an undrafted, unknown to Super Bowl MVP. Following that, we have what might be the greatest postseason performance by a running back in history from Terrell Davis. The 1997 season saw Davis at his most commanding. Denver posted a 12-5 record while Davis racked up 1,750 rushing yards and 15 touchdowns in the regular season, which earned him a first-team All-Pro selection. He eclipsed the 100-yard mark in all three postseason contests, averaging 142.5 yards per game, the best playoff average for any running back with a minimum of 5 games played. In the Super Bowl versus the reigning champion Packers, Davis gained 157 yards and scored 3 times on 30 carries, all while battling a severe migraine that caused temporary vision loss in the second quarter. Although he was sidelined for much of the second period, he returned to take over the game. His game-winning 1-yard touchdown with 1 minute and 45 seconds remaining secured the 31-24 win. Davis fought through the agony, overpowered the champions, and finally brought Elway his first championship. Concluding this tier, we examine Jalen Hurts' 2024 season. For Hurts, the 2024 campaign was a story of redemption. 2 years after falling to Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, Philadelphia posted a 14-3 record during the regular season. In the Super Bowl rematch against Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs, Hurts delivered a near-flawless performance. He connected on 17 of 22 attempts for 221 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception, while also gaining 72 yards on the ground for another score in a commanding 40-22 win. Hurts achieved a Super Bowl first, becoming the only quarterback in the game's history to lead all players in rushing yards. His 72 yards on the ground surpassed his own previous benchmark for the most rushing yards by a quarterback in a Super Bowl, eclipsing the 70 yards he recorded 2 years earlier. He also distinguished himself as the first player in NFL history to record at least 5 touchdowns through the air and another 5 on the ground in a single postseason. Hurts finally exacted his revenge upon Mahomes, silencing his critics and cementing his legacy for the next 6 months or so. Level 7 represents the absolute elite. Yes, Level 7, the very best. These are the greatest performances of all time. We'll begin with the most significant upset in the annals of the NFL, featuring Eli Manning in 2007. The Giants concluded the regular season at 10-6, barely slipping into the playoffs with a wild card berth. Eli's stats included 336 yards, 23 touchdowns, and 20 interceptions. No one believed they had a prayer. They were facing the 18-0 Patriots in the Super Bowl, arguably the finest team ever put together, attempting to cap off the first perfect season since 1972. But Eli was magnificent under pressure. In the 17-14 upset, he connected on 19 of 34 passes for 255 yards, with 2 touchdowns and 1 interception. But the final drive is what everyone remembers. Behind 14-10 with a little more than 2 minutes remaining, Eli commanded the Giants on an 83-yard march to victory. David Tyree secured a miraculous 32-yard reception by pinning the football to his helmet. A few plays later, Eli found Plaxico Burress for the game-clinching 13-yard touchdown with just 35 seconds left. The dream of a perfect season was shattered, creating a legendary moment in the process. And speaking of legends, we turn to Doug Williams. The 1987 season for Williams was extraordinary. The Redskins posted an 11-4 record, though Doug served as the backup to Jay Schroeder for the majority of the season. In the Super Bowl against the Broncos, the Redskins found themselves in a 10-0 hole after the first quarter. Williams had hyperextended his knee during that first quarter, and many presumed his day was over. But he returned to deliver the most incredible single-quarter showing in Super Bowl history. In the second quarter alone, Williams was 9 for 11, amassing 228 yards and 4 touchdowns. Washington exploded for 35 points in that quarter, a mark that remains a Super Bowl record. Williams concluded the game 18 for 29 with 340 yards and 4 touchdowns, becoming the first black quarterback to both start and win a Super Bowl. When it comes to winning Super Bowls, Patrick Mahomes is a name that must be mentioned. Now, Patrick Mahomes' performances in the Super Bowl can be somewhat inconsistent, but his 2023 campaign was defined by the quest for a repeat championship. The Chiefs finished the regular season at 11-6, which was their least impressive record in several years. Mahomes passed for 4,183 yards and 27 touchdowns. His statistics were not dazzling, prompting many to speculate that the dynasty was finally coming to an end. In the Super Bowl matchup with the 49ers, Mahomes effectively silenced every single one of his doubters. He was 34 of 46 through the air for 333 yards and 2 scores, with 1 interception in a 25-22 overtime classic. Trailing 19-16 late in the fourth, Mahomes led a crucial drive to set up a game-tying field goal as regulation ended. Then, in overtime, under the new playoff rules for the first time in Super Bowl history, he was simply flawless. Mahomes guided the Chiefs on a 75-yard drive, capping it off with a game-winning 3-yard touchdown pass to Mecole Hardman as the overtime clock expired. That meant back-to-back Super Bowl MVP awards, consecutive championships, and at just 28 years of age, Mahomes already had 3 rings, sparking comparisons to legends like Brady and Montana. And on the subject of Montana, we have a series of 49ers to discuss. Let's start with Joe Cool in 1989. Montana's 1989 season was all about reaffirming that the 49ers dynasty was far from over. San Francisco compiled a 14-2 record with new head coach George Seifert, who had taken over for the iconic Bill Walsh. In the Super Bowl against the Broncos, Montana delivered what might be the single most commanding performance in the game's history. He completed 22 of 29 passes for 297 yards and 5 touchdowns without a single interception. The 49ers utterly dismantled Denver 55-10 in the most one-sided Super Bowl ever. This earned Montana his 3rd Super Bowl MVP award, tying an NFL record, and it solidified his reputation as the ultimate clutch quarterback. That is, until Tom Brady entered the scene. We touched on him briefly before, but now we'll focus on Jerry Rice. Rice's 1988 season was the stuff of legends. The 49ers finished at 10-6, with Rice hauling in 64 receptions for 1,306 yards and 9 touchdowns in the regular season. He was already proving himself to be the most dominant wide receiver in the sport. During the Super Bowl against the Bengals, Rice was completely unstoppable. He pulled down 11 catches for 215 yards and a score, remaining the only receiver in Super Bowl history to eclipse 200 receiving yards. Yet, it was his contributions on the final game-winning drive that truly cemented his legacy. With just over 3 minutes left and the 49ers trailing 16-13, Montana found Rice on 2 separate plays for a total of 24 yards, which put San Francisco into field goal range. While Montana ultimately threw the game-winning touchdown to John Taylor with around 30 seconds to go, Rice's incredible play throughout the contest, and particularly on that final drive, was the decisive factor. To conclude this 49er trio, let's look at Steve Young's monumental 1994 Super Bowl victory. For Young, the 1994 season was about finally overcoming his biggest hurdles. The 49ers went 13-3 as Young passed for 3,969 yards and 35 touchdowns, earning a 112.8 passer rating during the regular season. He claimed his 2nd league MVP award in a span of 3 years. In the Super Bowl facing the Chargers, he connected on 24 of 36 passes for 325 yards and a Super Bowl record of 6 touchdown passes with 0 interceptions. On top of that, he also ran for 49 yards. At 33 years old, Young had finally put all criticism to rest. Finally, we arrive at the greatest Super Bowl performance and MVP win of all time, Tom Brady's 28-3 comeback in 2016. Brady's 2016 season began under a cloud of controversy. He was suspended for 4 games due to Deflategate. Upon his return in Week 5, Brady was a force of nature, leading his team to an 11-1 record while throwing for 3,054 yards, 28 touchdowns, and only 2 interceptions across 12 games. In the Super Bowl against the Falcons, Brady engineered the most incredible comeback the game has ever seen. Facing a 28-3 deficit in the 3rd quarter, he rallied the Patriots all the way back to a 34-28 overtime victory. Brady completed 43 of his 62 attempts for 466 yards and 2 touchdowns. At that juncture, the totals for both completions and yardage established new Super Bowl records. During the overtime period, Brady led a 75-yard drive over 8 plays, which concluded with James White scoring the decisive 2-yard touchdown to win the game. Brady's 5th Super Bowl championship equaled Charles Haley's record for the most ever, and his 4th award for Super Bowl Most Valuable Player was an unparalleled achievement. This concludes our hierarchical analysis of the 7 echelons of Super Bowl Most Valuable Players. Thank you for your viewership, and we encourage you to subscribe.